It was a chilly morning in the heart of downtown Chicago. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the city streets. Laura Monroe tightened her scarf around her neck as she walked briskly toward her favorite cafe on the corner of 5th Street. She had always loved this place, not only for its delicious coffee but also for the cozy atmosphere that made her feel at home. Every day, without fail, she would stop by to grab her usual order, a large caramel latte with an extra shot of espresso. It was her little ritual, a moment of calm before diving into the chaos of her busy workday. Laura worked as a graphic designer for a small advertising agency. Her job required long hours and constant creativity, so she relied heavily on these quiet mornings to center herself. Today, however, something felt different. As she approached the cafe, she noticed a group of bikers gathered outside, their leather jackets gleaming under the morning light. They were laughing loudly, their voices carrying through the crisp air. Laura hesitated for a second but shook off any unease. She reminded herself that they were probably harmless, just regular people starting their day like everyone else. Inside the cafe, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Laura ordered her drink and waited patiently by the counter. When her name was called, she reached out to grab the steaming cup, careful not to spill it. With her coffee securely in hand, she turned to leave, already thinking about the bus she needed to catch. But as she stepped out onto the sidewalk, disaster struck. A man appeared seemingly out of nowhere, stepping directly into her path. Startled, Laura tried to sidestep him, but it was too late. Their bodies collided and the hot liquid from his coffee splashed all over his leather jacket. Time seemed to slow down as Laura realized what had happened. She gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, clutching her own cup tightly. The man glared at her, his expression darkening instantly. He was tall and muscular, with tattoos covering his arms and a scowl etched onto his face. His name was Keith Doyle, though Laura didn't know that yet. All she saw was the anger radiating off him in waves. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, his voice sharp and menacing. I didn't mean to," Laura stammered, taking a step back. Her heart raced as she looked up at him, feeling small and vulnerable. "I'll pay for your coffee, I promise." Keith ignored her offer, his focus shifting to the wet stain spreading across his jacket. "You think money fixes everything?" He spat, his tone dripping with contempt. Without warning, he grabbed her wrist, yanking her closer. Laura winced, at the sudden pain, struggling to pull away. "Let me go," she pleaded, panic rising in her chest. But Keith wasn't done. His gaze swept over the cafe's outdoor seating area, landing on another customer who had left their coffee unattended. In one swift motion, he snatched the cup and turned back to Laura. "Since you ruined my jacket, let's see how you like it," he growled. Before she could react, he tipped the contents of the cup over her head. Hot coffee cascaded down Laura's scalp, burning her skin and soaking her hair. She screamed, dropping her own cup as the searing heat overwhelmed her senses. Tears sprang to her eyes, blurring her vision as she stumbled backward. The pain was unbearable, and humiliation quickly followed. People nearby froze, staring in disbelief at the scene unfolding before them. Some whispered nervously, while others pulled out their phones to record the incident. Laura stood rooted to the spot, trembling uncontrollably. Her mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. How could someone be so cruel? Why hadn't anyone stopped him? She felt exposed and powerless, her confidence shattered in an instant. Through her tears, she caught glimpses of the growing crowd around her, their faces a mix of pity and horror. Yet no one stepped forward to help. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, a deep voice cut through the tension. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Everyone turned to see a man striding toward them. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short-cropped hair and piercing blue eyes. There was an aura of authority about him, commanding attention without effort. This wasn't just any man. It was Jason Statham. Yes, the Jason Statham, the action star known for his tough guy roles and real-life bravery. He moved with purpose, his jaw clenched as he assessed the situation, When his gaze landed on Laura, he softened slightly, though his expression remained stern. Then he turned to Keith, who still loomed over Laura like a predator. "Back off," Statham said firmly, his voice low but unmistakably dangerous. Keith sneered, clearly unimpressed by the newcomer. "Mind your own business, pal. This doesn't concern you." Statham took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "It does now," he replied coolly. His eyes locked onto Keith's, daring him to make a move. For a brief moment, the two men stood facing each other, the tension palpable. Laura watched silently, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. Would this stranger really stand up for her, or would things escalate further? As the seconds ticked by, the crowd held its collective breath. No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Jason Statham had changed the course of this morning, and possibly Laura's life, forever. Keith's sneer deepened as he sized up Jason Statham. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who looked like they belonged in a movie rather than on the streets of Chicago. Still, Keith wasn't about to back down. His pride and his reputation was at stake. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he spat, his voice dripping with mockery. "This is between me and her. Stay out of it." Statham didn't flinch. His calm demeanor only seemed to infuriate. Keith further. "I'm not looking for trouble," Statham said evenly, his tone measured but firm. "But I also can't stand here and watch while someone abuses an innocent person." His eyes flicked briefly to Laura, who was still trembling, her face pale and streaked with tears. Then his gaze returned to Keith, unwavering. "So, what's it going to be?" The crowd around them had grown larger, murmurs rippling through the onlookers. Some people whispered nervously, while others pulled out their phones to record the confrontation. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Laura felt like she was caught in the middle of a storm, powerless to escape. She wanted to say something, to thank Statham for stepping in, but her voice refused to cooperate. All she could do was stand there, clutching her arms tightly around herself. Keith, meanwhile, was growing more agitated by the second. He hated being the center of attention, especially when it made him look bad. And now, with Statham standing so confidently in front of him, he felt cornered. His fists clenched at his sides and his jaw tightened. "You want to play hero? Fine," he growled, his words laced with venom. "Let's see how far that gets you." Without warning, Keith lunged forward, aiming a punch directly at Statham's face. It was a reckless move, fueled by anger rather than strategy. But Statham was no stranger to conflict. Even outside of his action-packed film roles, he had spent years honing his skills in martial arts and self-defense. As Keith's fist came hurtling toward him, Statham reacted instantly, ducking low to avoid the blow. The crowd gasped audibly as Statham moved with precision and control. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Keith's arm mid-swing, twisting it behind his back. Keith grunted in pain, struggling to break free, but Statham's grip was like iron. With his other hand, Statham delivered a sharp strike to Keith's ribs, causing the biker to stagger backward. The entire exchange lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt like an eternity to those watching. Keith stumbled, clutching his side as he tried to regain his balance. For a moment he considered retaliating, but the look in Statham's eyes stopped him cold. There was no malice there, just a quiet determination that left no room for doubt. If Keith pressed his luck, things would only get worse. Breathing heavily, Keith muttered something under his breath, a string of curses too muffled for anyone to hear clearly, and stormed off, shoving his way through the crowd. As soon as Keith disappeared from view, the tension broke. People began talking excitedly, their voices overlapping as they recounted what they had just witnessed. Some cheered for Statham, while others expressed sympathy for Laura. A few even approached him, asking for autographs or selfies. But Statham ignored the attention, his focus entirely on Laura. He turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice filled with genuine concern. Laura nodded weakly, though her hands were still trembling as she wiped away the remnants of coffee from her face. I think so, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for stopping him. Statham nodded, his eyes scanning her for any signs of serious injury. That looked pretty bad, he said, frowning slightly. We should get you checked out. Without waiting for her response, he flagged down a taxi that was passing by. The yellow cab screeched to a halt at the curb and Statham opened the door for Laura. Come on, he urged. I'll take you to a hospital. Laura hesitated, unsure whether to accept his offer. She didn't know this man beyond his famous name, and part of her felt guilty about imposing on him. But another part of her, a stronger part, knew she needed help. Her scalp still burned and her nerves were frazzled. Reluctantly, she climbed into the taxi, sinking into the seat as Statham slid in beside her. On the ride to the hospital, neither of them spoke much. Laura stared out the window, lost in thought while Statham kept glancing at her, ensuring she was holding up okay. The silence wasn't awkward, though. It was comforting, almost protective. When they arrived, Statham insisted on paying the fare and even accompanied Laura inside, refusing to leave until he was certain she was in good hands. At the hospital, the staff quickly attended to Laura, cleaning her burns and applying a soothing ointment. Thankfully, the damage wasn't as severe as it could have been, though the doctors advised her to keep the area clean and avoid scratching it. While she waited for the final checkup, Statham handed her his phone. Put your number in, he instructed. Call me if you need anything. Laura blinked in surprise, taken aback by his kindness. Really? You don't have to do that, she protested, though her heart warmed at the gesture. I know I don't have to, Statham replied with a small smile. But I want to. You've been through a lot today, and no one should have to deal with that alone. Grateful, Laura entered her number into his phone before handing it back. By the time she was discharged, the initial shock of the incident had begun to wear off, replaced by a sense of gratitude, and maybe even admiration, for the man who had stepped in to save her. Little did she know, this chance encounter was just the beginning of something unexpected. When Laura finally returned home later that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about Statham. His bravery, his humility, the way he had put himself in harm's way without hesitation. It all seemed too good to be true. She replayed the events of the day over and over in her mind, marveling at how drastically her morning had shifted. What started as an ordinary day had turned into something extraordinary, thanks to a stranger who had shown her what true courage looked like. Over the next few days, Laura debated whether to reach out to Statham. Part of her worried it would come across as presumptuous or intrusive, but another part of her couldn't shake the feeling that she owed him more than just a simple thank you. Finally, summoning her courage, she sent him a text message. Hi, it's Laura. Just wanted to say thank you again for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. To her relief, Statham responded almost immediately. No problem, Laura, glad I could help. How are you feeling? Their conversation flowed naturally from there, each message building on the last. They talked about everything, their jobs, their hobbies, their favorite movies. Laura learned that Statham was in town for a promotional event, and that he enjoyed reading adventure novels during his downtime. Statham in turn discovered that Laura had a passion for photography and often spent her weekends exploring the city with her camera. What began as a simple exchange of gratitude soon blossomed into something deeper. Despite their vastly different lives, they found common ground in their shared love for creativity and storytelling. Laura admired Statham's humility and kindness, qualities she hadn't expected from someone so renowned, and Statham appreciated Laura's resilience and warmth, traits that reminded him of the importance of human connection. As the days turned into weeks, their friendship continued to grow. Though Statham eventually returned to his busy schedule, they stayed in touch regularly, exchanging messages and occasionally meeting up whenever he was in town. Laura never imagined that such a traumatic experience could lead to something so meaningful. Yet, in a strange twist of fate, the worst moment of her life had introduced her to one of the best. Sometimes heroes really do exist outside the movies, and sometimes They show up when you least expect them. Weeks passed and life slowly began to return to normal for Laura. The burns on her scalp healed, leaving only faint red marks that would fade with time. Yet the emotional scars remained, lingering in the back of her mind like shadows. She couldn't walk past the cafe on 5th Street without feeling a pang of unease, and crowded places still made her nervous. But she was determined not to let Keith's cruelty define her. Every day she reminded herself that she had survived something terrible, and come out stronger because of it. What helped most was the unexpected bond she had formed with Jason Statham. Their conversations became a source of comfort for Laura, a reminder that kindness existed even in the darkest moments. Statham, too, found himself looking forward to their exchanges. There was something refreshing about talking to someone who didn't care about his fame or fortune. Laura saw him as a person, not a celebrity, and that meant more to him than he could put into words. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone during a break at work, Laura came across an article about Keith Doyle. Her stomach tightened as she read the headline, "Local Biker Arrested for Involvement in Violent Crimes Across the State." The story detailed how Keith had been linked to a string of assaults and robberies, targeting both individuals and small businesses. Police believed he was part of a larger gang operating in the area, though investigations were still ongoing. Laura felt a wave of relief wash over her. Knowing that Keith was behind bars and wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else was a weight off her shoulders. Still, the news brought back memories she had tried so hard to bury. She closed the article and leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. It was over. He couldn't hurt her anymore. And yet, the thought of what might have happened if Statham hadn't intervened sent shivers down her spine. That evening, Laura decided to share the news with Statham. She texted him a link to the article along with a short message. "Just saw this. Thought you should know." Within minutes, he replied, "Good riddance. People like him don't deserve to roam free." Their conversation continued, veering away from Keith and toward lighter topics. They talked about their weekends, their favorite books, and even their dreams for the future. Laura admitted that she had always wanted to travel the world, capturing its beauty through her camera lens. Statham confessed that he dreamed of retiring to a quiet countryside home someday, far away from the chaos of Hollywood. The more they talked, the more Laura realized how much they had in common. Despite their different backgrounds, they shared a deep appreciation for simplicity and authenticity. While Statham's life was often filled with glitz and glamour, he longed for moments of peace and solitude, things Laura cherished every day. Their connection grew stronger with each passing week, until it became clear that this wasn't just a casual friendship anymore. A few months later, Statham invited Laura to visit him on set. He was filming a new action movie in Los Angeles, and though he rarely extended invitations to people outside his close circle, he felt compelled to include her. "It'll be fun," he texted. "You can see how the magic happens." Laura hesitated at first. She had never been to a film set before, and the idea of stepping into Statham's world intimidated her. But curiosity got the better way, and she agreed. A few days later, she boarded a plane to Los Angeles, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. When she arrived on set, she was greeted by a whirlwind of activity. Crew members rushed back and forth, cameras rolled, and lights illuminated the scene like a giant stage. Statham spotted her immediately and waved her over, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Welcome to my world," he said, giving her a quick hug. "I hope you're ready for some chaos." Laura laughed, her initial nervousness melting away. "I think I can handle it," she replied, though her wide eyes betrayed her awe. Statham gave her a tour of the set, introducing her to the director, producers, and other cast members. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, though Laura couldn't help but notice the starstruck looks some of them gave her. After all, it wasn't every day that someone walked onto a Hollywood set as Jason Statham's guest. Later that afternoon, Laura watched from the sidelines as Statham filmed a high-octane action sequence. The scene involved a car chase, explosions, and hand-to-hand combat. all performed by Statham himself without the use of a stunt double. Laura watched in amazement as he executed each move with precision and grace, his years of training evident in every punch and kick. When the director called "cut" and the scene wrapped, Statham jogged over to her, sweat glistening on his forehead. "What did you think?" he asked, grinning proudly. "That was incredible," Laura said, shaking her head in disbelief. "You make it look so easy," Statham chuckled. "Years of practice," he said modestly. "But trust me, it's not as glamorous as it seems." The rest of the day flew by in a blur. Laura met more people, learned about the intricacies of filmmaking, and even got to hold one of the cameras used during production. By the time the sun set, she was exhausted, but exhilarated. As they drove back to Statham's house, she turned to him and smiled. "Thank you for letting me be part of your world today," she said sincerely. "It was amazing." Statham glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you came," he said softly. "It's nice to have someone here who sees me as, well, just me." Laura nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. For all his fame and success, Statham was still human. He craved genuine connections just like anyone else, and in Laura, he had found someone who accepted him for who he truly was, not the action hero on screen, but the kind, humble man behind the scenes. Over the next few weeks, their relationship continued to deepen. They spent hours talking on the phone, sharing stories and laughing at inside jokes. When Statham returned to Chicago for another promotional event, they met up for dinner. Sitting across from him in a cozy restaurant, Laura realized how much he had come to mean to her. He wasn't just the man who had saved her from Keith, he was someone she trusted, admired, and cared about deeply. For Statham, the feeling was mutual. Though he had always valued his independence, he found himself wanting to spend more time with Laura. Her positivity and resilience inspired him, reminding him of the importance of staying grounded despite the pressures of his career. Together, they balanced each other out, creating a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. As the months went by, Laura began to notice subtle changes in herself. The trauma she had endured no longer haunted her as fiercely as it once did. She felt stronger, braver, and more confident in her ability to face challenges head-on. Part of that growth was thanks to Statham, whose unwavering support had helped her heal. But another part of it came from within, a newfound determination to live life fully, without fear. One evening, as they strolled along the Chicago River, Statham stopped suddenly and turned to face Laura. "Do you ever think about how things could have gone differently?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. "If I hadn't been there that morning, I mean." Laura paused, considering his question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remind myself that everything happens for a reason. That day changed. My life, yes, but maybe it was supposed to. Maybe it led me here to you." Statham smiled, his eyes softening. "I'm glad it did," he said quietly. "You've changed my life too, you know." They stood there for a moment, the city lights reflecting off the water around them. Neither of them needed to say anything more. In that instant, they both knew that their connection was something special, something worth holding on to. Life wasn't perfect, of course. Challenges still arose and doubts occasionally crept in, but together they faced them with courage and grace. What started as a chance encounter had blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. A friendship that transcended boundaries, a bond that defied expectations, and ultimately, a love that proved stronger than fear. Sometimes fate has a way of turning our worst moments into opportunities for growth. And sometimes, heroes really do exist outside the movies. For Laura Monroe, meeting Jason Statham had been more than just a stroke of luck. It had been the beginning of a beautiful journey. As the weeks turned into months, Laura and Jason's friendship continued to grow stronger. They spoke almost every day, sharing bits and pieces of their lives with each other. Whether it was a funny story from work, an update on a personal project, or just a random thought that popped into their heads, they found comfort in knowing they could always count on one another. Their conversations were easy and natural, like those of two old friends who had known each other for years. Jason, despite his busy schedule, made time for Laura whenever he could. He sent her messages between takes on set, called her during long flights, and even mailed her postcards from different locations where he was filming. For Laura, these small gestures meant the world. She cherished the moments when she saw his name light up her phone screen or received a package with his familiar handwriting on it. It reminded her that no matter how far apart they were, he was still thinking of her. Laura, too, tried to be there for Jason in her own way. When he told her about the stress of working on back-to-back projects, she listened patiently and offered words of encouragement. When he mentioned missing home-cooked meals while traveling, she surprised him by sending care packages filled with homemade cookies and snacks. These little acts of kindness brought a smile to Jason's face, grounding him during hectic days and reminding him of the warmth of home. Their bond wasn't without its challenges, though. Long-distance friendships are never easy, especially when one person is constantly moving and the other has roots planted firmly in one place. There were times when Laura felt guilty for taking up Jason's time, worried that she might be distracting him from his responsibilities. And there were moments when Jason wondered if he was asking too much of her, fearing that his unpredictable lifestyle might make things difficult for her. But neither of them let these doubts get in the way. Instead, they talked openly about their feelings, addressing any concerns before they could turn into bigger issues. This honesty only strengthened their connection, proving that trust and communication were at the heart of their relationship. 1. Evening after wrapping up a particularly grueling day of filming, Jason called Laura. His voice sounded tired but happy. "Hey," he said softly. "I've been thinking." "About what?" Laura asked, settling onto her couch with a cup of tea. "About you," he replied. "And me. Us." Laura's heart skipped a beat. She'd often wondered where their friendship was headed, but she had never dared to bring it up. Now, hearing Jason say those words made her feel both excited and nervous. "What about us?" she asked cautiously. "I don't know," he admitted. "It's complicated, isn't it? We live in different worlds, and my life, well, it's not exactly normal, but I can't stop thinking about how much you mean to me. You're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens, and the first person I turn to when things go wrong." Laura smiled, touched by his words. "You mean a lot to me too," she said honestly. "More than I ever expected." They fell silent for a moment, letting the weight of their feelings sink in. Finally, Jason broke the silence. "Maybe we don't need to figure everything out right now," he suggested. "We can just take things one step at a time and see where it goes." Laura nodded even though he couldn't see her. "That sounds good to me," she agreed. "No pressure, just whatever feels right." From that point on, their dynamic shifted slightly. While they still maintained the same level of closeness, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a sense that their friendship was evolving into something deeper. They didn't rush it. Instead, they allowed their connection to unfold naturally, savoring each moment as it came. Over time, Jason began inviting Laura to more events and gatherings. At first, she hesitated, unsure whether she belonged in his glamorous world. But Jason reassured her, telling her that she fit perfectly wherever he was. "You're not here because of what you do or who you know," he told her once. "You're here because you're you, and that's all that matters." With his support, Laura started to embrace this new side of her life. She attended film premieres, award shows, and charity galas, always amazed by the kindness and generosity of the people she met. Though she sometimes felt out of place among celebrities and industry insiders, she reminded herself of what Jason had said. None of that mattered. What mattered was being true to herself, and that was something she excelled at. In return, Laura introduced Jason to her world. She took him to art galleries, local music performances, and quiet parks where they could escape the noise of the city. She showed him her favorite photography spots and shared stories about the places she loved most. Jason soaked it all in, grateful for the chance to experience life through her eyes. He admired her passion for creativity and her ability to find beauty in the simplest things. Through these shared experiences, they discovered even more common ground. Both of them valued authenticity over appearances, preferring meaningful conversations to superficial small talk. They enjoyed exploring new places together, whether it was a hidden gem in Chicago or a bustling street market in Los Angeles, and they laughed endlessly, finding joy in the little quirks and habits that made each other unique. Of course, there were still challenges along the way. Jason's demanding career often pulled him away, leaving Laura to navigate her emotions alone. And Laura occasionally struggled with self-doubt, wondering if she was enough for someone like him. But they tackled these obstacles together, leaning on each other for strength and support. One day, while flipping through a magazine, Laura came across an article about Jason. The headline read, "Jason Statham opens up about finding love again." Intrigued, she began reading, her heart racing as she realized the article was about her. In it, Jason talked candidly about how meeting Laura had changed his perspective on relationships. "She's unlike anyone I've ever met," he said. "She's kind, genuine, and incredibly strong. She reminds me of what's truly important in life." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she finished the article. She had always known how much Jason cared about her, but seeing it written in black and white made it feel real in a whole new way. That evening she texted him, "I read the article. Thank you for saying such beautiful things about me." Jason's response came quickly. "Every word is true. I hope you know how special you are." Their journey wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't conventional, but it was theirs. A story born out of unexpected circumstances and nurtured by mutual respect and love. As they continued to build a life together, they learned that happiness doesn't come from avoiding challenges or living a picture-perfect existence. It comes from embracing the messy, unpredictable moments and finding someone who makes it all worthwhile. For Laura and Jason, that someone was each other. As the months rolled on, Laura and Jason's bond grew even stronger. They had learned to navigate the complexities of their lives together, finding ways to make their connection work, despite the distance and differences in their worlds. For Laura, it was a balancing act, juggling her career, her passions, and her growing relationship with someone whose life often felt like a whirlwind. But she didn't mind the effort. Every moment spent with Jason, whether in person or over the phone, reminded her that some things were worth fighting for. Jason, too, found himself changing in subtle but meaningful ways. His life had always been fast-paced, filled with action-packed roles and constant travel. Yet, being with Laura made him want to slow down, to savor the quieter moments he had once overlooked. He began carving out time for himself, not just for her but for his own peace of mind. On days off, he would join Laura for long walks through the city, or sit with her in cozy cafes, enjoying simple pleasures like a good cup of coffee or a warm pastry. These small rituals became anchors in their relationship, grounding them amidst the chaos of their busy lives. One weekend, Jason surprised Laura by flying into Chicago unannounced. She hadn't seen him in weeks, and the unexpected visit left her beaming with joy. "What are you doing here?" she asked, as she opened her apartment door to find him standing there with a sheepish grin. "I missed you," he said simply, pulling her into a hug. "Thought I'd come see you before heading back to set." Laura laughed, her heart swelling with happiness. "Well, you're definitely welcome," she replied, wrapping her arms around him tightly. "Let me guess, you've got another early morning flight tomorrow?" "Something like that," Jason admitted. "But tonight I'm all yours." They spent the evening talking and laughing, catching up on everything they had missed during their time apart. Later, they sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle against the dark sky. The conversation turned reflective, as it often did when they were alone together. "You know," Jason said after a while, his voice thoughtful, "I used to think my life was fine the way it was. I mean, I loved what I did, and I didn't really need anything else, but now I realize how much better it is with you in it." Laura looked at him, her eyes softening. "You have no idea how much that means to me," she said quietly. "I feel the same way. Being with you has changed. Me for the better. Jason smiled, reaching out to take her hand. I don't know what the future holds, he admitted. But whatever happens, I want you to be part of it. It was a simple statement, yet it carried so much weight. Laura felt tears prick her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. I want that too, she whispered. More than anything. The next morning, as Jason prepared to leave for the airport, Laura walked him to the cab. Standing on the sidewalk, they shared one last hug before he climbed inside. Take care of yourself, Jason said, giving her hand a squeeze. And call me when you land, Laura added, smiling despite the ache of saying goodbye. Watching the taxi disappear around the corner, Laura felt a mix of emotions. Sadness at seeing him go, but also gratitude for the time they had shared. Their relationship wasn't always easy, but it was real, and that made all the difference. A few weeks later, Laura received an invitation that took her by surprise. Jason's team had reached out, asking if she would accompany him to a prestigious awards ceremony in Los Angeles. It wasn't the first time he had invited her to an event, but this one felt different. This was a major industry occasion, attended by some of the biggest names in Hollywood. The thought of walking the red carpet alongside Jason made her nervous, but also excited. When she arrived in LA, Jason greeted her at the hotel with a bouquet of flowers. You look amazing, he said, his eyes lighting up as he handed her the blooms. Laura blushed, smoothing the fabric of her elegant dress. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. That night, as they stepped onto the red carpet, flashes of cameras illuminated the air around them. Reporters called out their names, eager to capture a glimpse of the famous actor and his mysterious date. Laura clung to Jason's arm, feeling both overwhelmed and exhilarated. Through it all, Jason remained calm and reassuring, guiding her gently through the crowd. You're doing great, he murmured as they posed for photos. Just keep smiling. Later, seated at their table during the ceremony, Laura marveled at the surreal nature of it all. She watched as Jason mingled effortlessly with colleagues and celebrities, admired by everyone in the room. Yet when he returned to her side, his attention was entirely focused on her. It was as if none of the glitz and glamour mattered as long as they were together. After the event, they retreated to a quiet rooftop lounge where they could relax away from the noise. Sitting under the stars, Laura reflected on the evening. That was incredible, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. I never imagined I'd experience something like that. Jason chuckled, raising his glass in a toast. To new experiences and to us, he said warmly. Because none of it would matter without you here. Laura raised her glass too, her heart full. To us, she echoed, feeling a surge of gratitude for the man sitting beside her. As their relationship deepened, Laura found herself opening up more about her past. She told Jason about the insecurities she had carried for years, the doubts that had sometimes held her back. He listened intently, offering words of encouragement and reminding her of her strength. You've overcome so much, he told her one evening. Don't ever forget that. In turn, Jason shared parts of himself he rarely revealed to others. He spoke about the pressures of fame, the loneliness that came with constantly being in the spotlight, and the fear of losing touch with who he truly was. Laura listened with empathy, understanding the weight of his struggles. Together, they created a safe space where they could be vulnerable without judgment. Their mutual support extended beyond emotional conversations. When Laura decided to pursue a dream project, a photography exhibition showcasing her work, they brainstormed ideas together. Jason offered suggestions, helped promote the event through his network, and even attended the opening night, cheering her on proudly. For Jason, seeing Laura thrive inspired him to pursue his own passions outside of acting. He started exploring creative projects that resonated with him personally, collaborating with artists and filmmakers who shared his vision. With Laura by his side, he felt emboldened to take risks and step outside his comfort zone. Of course, not every day was perfect. There were still moments of uncertainty, times when the challenges of their lives threatened to pull them apart. Long stretches without seeing each other tested their patience, and misunderstandings occasionally arose. But they tackled these hurdles head-on, refusing to let anything come between them. One particularly tough week, Laura found herself doubting whether they could sustain their relationship long-term. She voiced her concerns to Jason during one of their late-night calls. "Sometimes I wonder if we're trying to force something that isn't meant to be," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. Jason paused, considering her words carefully. "Do you really believe that?" he asked gently. "Or are you just scared?" Laura hesitated, then sighed. "Maybe a little of both," she admitted. "I get it," Jason said. "This isn't easy, but I also know that what we have is rare. We've built something real, something worth fighting for. So yeah, it's hard, but I don't regret a single second of it." His honesty reassured her, easing the knot of anxiety in her chest. "Me neither," she said softly. "I guess we just keep going, right?" "Right," Jason agreed. "One step at a time." Over the following months, Laura and Jason continued to grow together. They celebrated milestones, supported each other's dreams, and faced challenges side by side. Their love story was far from ordinary. It was messy, unpredictable, and imperfect, but it was theirs. And in the end, that was all that mattered. For Laura, meeting Jason had been a turning point. What began as a chance encounter had transformed into a journey of healing, growth, and discovery. She had learned to embrace her strengths, confront her fears, and trust in the power of human connection. For Jason, Laura had brought light into his life. She reminded him of the beauty and simplicity, the importance of staying grounded, and the joy of sharing life with someone who truly understood him. Together they proved that love doesn't follow a script. It's messy, complicated, and beautiful, all at once. And sometimes it starts with a stranger stepping in to save you from a bad day. As the months turned into a year, Laura and Jason's relationship reached a new level of depth and understanding. They had weathered storms together, celebrated victories, and supported each other through moments of doubt. Their connection had grown stronger with time, rooted in trust, respect, and an unshakable bond that neither of them had anticipated when they first met. Laura's photography exhibition had been a success, thanks in part to Jason's encouragement and help. Seeing her work displayed on the walls of a gallery filled her with pride, not just for what she had achieved, but for how far she had come since that fateful morning at the cafe. The scars from that day were still there, both physical and emotional, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of her resilience and the unexpected ways life can change in an instant. Jason, too, found himself inspired by Laura's determination. Her courage to chase her dreams pushed him to explore his own passions beyond acting. He began working on a documentary project about everyday heroes, ordinary people who made extraordinary impacts on others' lives. It was something he had always wanted to do, but it wasn't until Laura encouraged him that he finally took the leap. "You've shown me that everyone has a story worth telling," he told her one evening as they sat together in his living room. "Including you." Their partnership wasn't without its challenges, though. Jason's demanding schedule often kept him away for weeks at a time, and Laura sometimes struggled with the distance. There were nights when she missed him so much, it felt like a physical ache, and days when the uncertainty of their future weighed heavily on her mind. Yet every time they reunited, those feelings melted away, replaced by the warmth of being together again. One crisp autumn afternoon, Jason surprised Laura with a trip to a remote cabin nestled deep in the mountains. He had rented it for the weekend, wanting to give them a chance to escape the noise of their busy lives and reconnect. As they drove up the winding road, surrounded by towering trees ablaze with fall colors, Laura felt a sense of peace wash over her. This was exactly what they needed, a break from the outside world, a chance to focus solely on each other. The cabin was cozy and charming, with a crackling fireplace, soft blankets draped over the furniture, and large windows that offered breathtaking views of the forest. They spent their days hiking along scenic trails, cooking meals together in the tiny kitchen, and sitting by the fire late into the night, talking about everything and nothing. It was during one of these quiet evenings, as they sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle above the treetops, that Jason decided to speak his heart. "Laura," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about where we're headed." Laura turned to look at him, her brow furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone curious but cautious. "I mean," Jason paused, gathering his thoughts. "This past year has been incredible. Being with you has changed my life in ways I never expected. You make me want to be a better person, to slow down, to appreciate the little things, to live fully. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she listened, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known for a while now how much Jason cared about her, but hearing him say it so plainly, so honestly, left her speechless. "I know our lives are complicated," Jason continued, taking her hand in his. "I know we face challenges most couples don't have to deal with, but none of that matters to me. What matters is that I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Laura's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. For a moment, all she could do was blink back tears. Then finally she managed to whisper, "I love you too. More than I ever thought possible." Relief and joy spread across Jason's face as he pulled her into a tight embrace. They held each other for a long time, letting the significance of the moment sink in. Neither of them had planned for this conversation, but somehow it felt inevitable, as if they had been building toward it since the day they met. Over the next few weeks, they talked openly about their future. Jason knew he couldn't ask Laura to give up her life in Chicago or abandon her career for him, nor did he expect her to. Likewise, Laura understood that Jason's work required him to travel frequently, and that stepping out of the spotlight entirely wasn't realistic for him. But they were determined to find a balance, to create a life that worked for both of them. They started making plans, small steps at first. Jason purchased a home in Chicago, a modest yet beautiful house near Lake Michigan, so he would have a permanent base when he wasn't filming. Laura decorated it with care, adding personal touches that made it feel like theirs. In return, Jason promised to spend more time in the city, immersing himself in Laura's world, just as she had done for him. Meanwhile, Laura began exploring opportunities that allowed her to travel alongside Jason whenever possible. She took freelance photography assignments that aligned with his projects, capturing behind-the-scenes moments and documenting the places they visited together. It was a way for her to stay connected to her passion while also sharing in his adventures. Their friends and family noticed the change in them. Both Laura and Jason seemed happier, more grounded, and deeply content. People often commented on how well-suited they were for each other, how their differences complemented one another perfectly. Jason admired Laura's creativity, kindness, and strength, while Laura cherished Jason's humility, loyalty, and protective nature. Together, they formed a partnership built on mutual admiration and unwavering support. A year later, standing on the same mountain where Jason had confessed his love, they exchanged vows in a private ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. The setting was simple yet magical, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine. Laura wore a flowing white dress, her hair adorned with wildflowers, while Jason looked dashing in a tailored suit. As they gazed into each other's eyes and spoke their promises, it was clear to everyone present that this was a love meant to last. After the ceremony, as they danced under the stars to the soft strumming of a guitar, Laura rested her head against Jason's shoulder. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" she asked, smiling softly. "How could I forget?" Jason replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That was the night I realized I couldn't imagine my life without you." Laura chuckled, her heart swelling with happiness. "And now look at us," she said, gesturing to the scene around them. "Who would have thought?" "Not me," Jason admitted with a grin. But I'm glad it turned out this way. As the music played on and the fire crackled nearby, they reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the chaos of that morning at the cafe to the quiet moments they had shared along the way, every step had led them to this point. Their love story was unconventional, messy, and imperfect, but it was theirs. And in the end, that was all that mattered. For Laura, meeting Jason had been a gift she never saw coming. He had saved her not just from Keith's cruelty, but from the doubts and fears that had once held her back. With him by her side, she had discovered a courage and confidence she didn't know she possessed. For Jason, Laura had been a beacon of light in a world that often felt overwhelming. She had reminded him of the importance of staying true to himself, of finding joy in the simple things, and of cherishing the connections that truly matter. Together, they proved that even in the most unlikely circumstances, love can blossom. Sometimes it takes a stranger stepping in at the right moment to set everything in motion, and sometimes that stranger becomes your forever.